Cellular tensions have never been this high in the wisteria vines, breaking the record set just last year. But loyal listeners, these seeds have either taken root or rotted in the dirt. Either way, the indifference of nature is both cruel and exquisite. On to the next item. We will be concluding our descent into the human psyche, for today at least. Yes, our story about Mr. Bridger Duc Hahn has reached terminal velocity. Sir, do you want the summary I have prepared? Nope, it's much more evocative to drop the audience right back into the story and let them flounder. OMG, do not start without me. Ever since I invented micro-interventions, I have been obsessed with human beings, and this one? He's dreamy. Also, I brought us pastries. Yes, for you too, Abby. Abby. Thank you, ma'am. That's very generous. Of course it is. I am the soul of generosity. Oh, by the way, they're the kind of donuts that whisper childhood regrets as you bite into them, so, there's that. Delicious. So here we are, the end of the road. For now. Perhaps Mr. Hahn will escape. Perhaps he'll adapt. Or perhaps he'll become just another whisper on the highway. One more lost voice between mile markers. Whatever the outcome, we thank him for the spectacle. And the drama. And the data. Indeed, all very precious. So, spectators, listeners, fellow travelers, settle in. This is the final leg of Route 413. Let's see if the route lets go of Bridger Hahn. Collection box at the crossroads. The heat didn't last. Neither did the ice, or the pink and purple hills and the unearthly chanting drifting all around, or the golden rings with dozens of eyes that sang every word backed by a bizarre portal structure, or the spunky cheerleaders enthusiastically performing by a crashed plane. The bun cha lasted, though. So did the water, eggs, and grapes. And of course, so did the mail. At least 72 hours into the route by Bridger's rough calculations, as he watched something that might have been the sunset for the third time, Bridger Hahn finally broke down. It happened at the beginning of what Bridger was calling his 8-hour break. He was debating again whether he'd have more luck sleeping on the bumpy metal floor of the cargo bay or the driver's seat, which did not recline. He'd already bathed in the lukewarm shower from the endlessly half-empty water bottle, grateful he didn't have an endless chunk of ice in his only water supply. He'd been eating his mother's cold meatballs. They tasted like home and comfort, and suddenly he was so very, very grateful he had more than peanut butter and jelly. The loneliness broke over him, and he crumbled like a puzzle jolted rudely by a careless hand. It happened in a very manly way, of course, hardly any blubbering. He almost certainly didn't say he missed his friends and his sisters and even his stupid bitch of a mother while slapping the steering wheel. He did curse all the gods he could name, which was quite a few by now, since most of them were on his route. Really, he accepted his fate rather well for a human, and I admire that about him. On the morning of the fourth day, Bridger woke stiff from sleeping all night curled in the fetal position against the inner wall of the LLV. He'd parked near the plane crash, and tried to talk to the cheerleaders since they had looked fairly human. At a distance. Then, in terror, he'd hidden in the cargo bay and tried to unsee what could not be unseen. Bridger did not feel much better when he opened the cargo door to the morning sun, but the plane crash was gone and so were the cheerleaders, and that was a good thing. He was surrounded on all sides by bright, verdant meadows. The air smelled fragrant with new flowers and sparkled with morning dew. Somewhere nearby, a creek and birds chirped happily in the trees. Bridger narrowed his eyes, suspicious of this peaceful place. He went into the cockpit of the LLV, got the grapes and hard-boiled eggs out of his lunchbox, and glared at the sun rising over the gently rolling hills. He did not enjoy his breakfast. On day 2, he had given up trying to follow the route book, which was as sparsely and shoddily written as any of the route books, and only filled him with more dread. On day 3, he had gone through the DPS and tried to understand the addresses in order to predict where he would be sent next on this insane route, but the addresses swam and swirled in his mind, and he could not remember or focus on what he'd learned. Today, he was resigned. In the distance there was a purple sheep, calmly grazing on the green grass. Bridger tensed, looking at the strangely colored beast. What else was wrong with that sheep? Did it have wolf's teeth? A mad hunger for human flesh? Was it going to make small talk? Then, as if noticing the attention, the sheep slowly raised its head, higher and higher. Bridger swallowed hard, and without taking his eyes away, reached for the door of the LLV to dart inside and flee again. The animal's neck kept extending, stretching toward the sky in a horrific display of unreal... Oh, that's a llama! Jesus Christ, Bridger muttered. I told you we do not use that name. Jesus Christ, boss! Bridger jolted and dropped his water bottle. It spilled on the wet grass and continued, like a new creek, springing from the endless supply of his plastic water bottle. Hello? The postmaster, who was not the postmaster, rose out of the field, peeling themselves out of a murder of crows. They had a shape like an elongated Margot Formica, as if they had forgotten which human they were possessing and had gotten the proportions wrong. We came to check on you. Why? Bridger replied with the suspicion of a good employee towards a confusing boss. Am I not doing it right? No, you are a good mail carrier. The boss held a boba tea that looked like a small ocean. When they slurped, Bridger thought he saw something swimming in between the ice. We are trying to... The postmaster tucked the tea into their elbow and reached into the front pocket of their uniform. They took out a little slip of paper and then looked at Bridger with that too-wide smile. Acknowledge contributions of hard work and demonstrate genuine interest in employees' career. Uh-huh. Bridger didn't believe it. Normally, he would just nod and smile at his boss, but he was standing in a field alongside a purple llama. He thought back to training seminars and administrators who occasionally talked to him. Is this a proper forum for complaints? The boss slurped the tea loudly. Their eyes rolled back into their head until they were only white, and their jaws slackened and hung loose, lolling as a strange buzzing noise poured from their mouth. Bridger felt it would be rude to interrupt, especially when he had serious complaints and probably only this thing could answer them. So he waited. No. The boss slurped again and then turned back to the crows. Well, how about for questions then? Bridger screwed his courage to the sticking place. Because I am one more weird thing away from torching that LLV and all its mail. The LLV, which was not running, revved nervously. The boss made a gesture with their hands, but the crows did not move to hide them. So, they crouched down, apparently trying to hide among the birds. But instead they tripped in them. Stop that, the postmaster said to no one in particular. You are someone in particular, and we are definitely talking to you. Don't think we don't know you are broadcasting this reality. Am I not allowed to spectate? Of course you are. And of course, all I spectate must be entered into eternal memory. So, what's the problem? Abby, is there a problem? Boss? Are you talking to me? Bridger came into the field and extended his hand down to the postmaster. No. The postmaster looked at Bridger, beautiful, brave, everything a good mail carrier should be. They thought, what harm could it do to answer a few questions? We did not think that. The creature that was not Margot Formica floundered in the mud. We are not the postmaster, and we know the harm it could do. Their hands, unused to being in this corporeal shape, could not grasp the earth, and they slipped again. Stop that! Wait. Bridger still extended his hand to the struggling person. Did you just say you're not the postmaster? We are your postmaster, Bridger Duc Hahn. The postmaster refused to let a mere human help them back to their feet, and so they slipped again in the mud. Stop that! Bridger lifted his hands defensively, the way one might in dealing with an unreasonable, unthinking Eldritch terror who had only recently been assigned to a department that had been mismanaged for several thousand years. The postmaster growled.
"Minion, hold this."
Bridger picked up his boss's tea and briefly glanced at the beverage. Tiny mermaids swam through the colorful brine. He cringed and tried to hand the drink back to his boss. "I was just hoping for some advice on... The root book is, somewhat unclear." Touched by his friendly gesture, the postmaster took pity on the human.
"I did not."
The postmaster bent backward until their hands touched the ground. They skidded away with terrifying speed, passing the crows and the purple llama and abandoning their boba tea. "Rude."
"Shh."
Bridger frowned with determination.
"Wow."
Abby, are you seeing this?
"Sir, we really must focus."
That's even sexier than when he's brooding.
I did not know a man could look that good.
A human man.
Wow. "Sir."
Right, of course. Bridger frowned with determination and hurled the boba at the ground. The tiny ocean splashed all over the mud and washed into the creek, carried by the tributary of Bridger's water bottle. The tiny mermaids in the boba tea swam with a thrilling combination of terror and liberty. They had been aware that they were being sacrificed to the entity's appetite for salty, crunchy things, and that the cosmic mailman had saved them from certain oblivion. They were also aware that if they did not make it to the creek in time, their salvation would be for nothing. Some chose to remain in the plastic cup, denying their rescue and staying in the sweet brine they had always known, away from the dread sun, the scent of foreign grass, and the terrible uncertainty of freedom. These would suffocate in a few hours when the drink that had been their only home spoiled in the heat. Others had no choice. They were spilled when the first splash hit the ground and sent careening in the flow of iced tea. Their bodies were broken on pebbles or split in half by stalks of grass as the tea relentlessly ran downhill and tumbled them while they screamed out of control. The lucky ones were the brave ones. They dove out of the cup and into the stream of spilled tea. They sensed the nearby creek and trusted that the flow of water from Bridger's dropped bottle would take them to safety. After all, why would some cosmic force save them from their fate, only to let them all wither in the heat of the day? These intrepid mermaids boldly swam with the flow of the tea, and then the fresh water, and then rejoiced when the thin stream of liquid brought them to the edge of the creek. Not all of them made it. The birds, chirping so merrily in the trees, spotted these delectable treats wriggling in the puddles and came to feast. Some swam accidentally into one of Bridger's footprints and the puddle forming there, and they could not climb out in time to join the short-lived spring. They would dehydrate when the puddle evaporated in the sun. Others left hesitantly, or swam too slowly, or dallied too long looking at the beauty of the sun, confident in the flow of the fresh water and their newfound joy. But what's this? The flow was slowing, but the creek was still so far. Bridger remembered his precious water bottle and picked it up. Without the spring, the mermaid's stream was quickly sucked into the soil, and the mermaids were left gasping for breath without the strength to drag themselves over the wet ground that was rapidly drying into mud. These died looking at the sky, but took solace in the rejoicing song of those who had reached the creek and now lived freely in the open water. One tiny mermaid would not give up, not even to look at the alien sight of the sky. She clawed at the grass and used the blades to drag herself over the mud. One of the birds had bitten a mother ant cleanly in half, and the older mermaid reached out to her daughter niece for comfort and relief. Desperate for any moisture, the younger mermaid swirled and rolled in the old one's blood, squeezed the tailless torso and bathed in the gush. As the mother ant moaned and died, our mermaid gasped another precious breath. It tasted like gore and catastrophe. Would she spend the rest of her life surrounded by the scent of burning earth and the taste of her dead mother ant? Would even the ocean wash her free of her vile, desperate need to live? One desperate flail, and she was in the flopping, blissfully wet pile of her sisters. They were so near the creek now. She could hear her friends and lovers in the water below, begging those stranded in the pile to leap, leap. These were the ones who were afraid of the fall. They could not make that final leap. They could not bear to trust in the divine goodness of the universe. Our mermaid, covered in blood and mud, was crushed beneath the others, flailing and flopping as their puddle rapidly shrank. Still, she persevered, pushing and shoving and wiggling beneath the others. When the birds found this last puddle, she dodged and rolled past their pecking beaks and gnashing talons. Then, she was at the edge. Leap, leap, looking down at the impossible distance between her and the flow of the water below. Still, she never hesitated. Her only chance at life was below, and so the mermaid threw herself into the air and toward the creek. The last thing this mermaid saw of the land was the huge creature that had saved them from the evil of the straw. The cosmic mailman looked enormous at this distance, crouching down on the ground. He held fire in his hand. The mermaid's eyes filled with awe and bafflement as her tiny brain wondered what divine intelligence could hold fire in their hand and still care enough for the small swimming ones to save them from the straw and the teeth and the tongue. The mermaid was dazed when she hit the water, and as the blood of her mother-aunt washed away, as her sister-lovers surrounded her in a joyful swirl, the mermaid was cleansed, reborn, and afire with the holy truth. "That which frees us to live handles the sun," she exclaimed, and the others cooed with interest and listened. "God does not choose who will burn and be eaten, and who will swim in liberty. God provides the test, and we choose. We choose with our determination, with our strength, with our faith." Unfortunately for this mermaid, she had begun to sermonize before her test was over. And the creek also had frogs. Bridger piled all the plastic tubs of undelivered mail, all the wooden ones he had collected, all the parcels, packages, glossy magazines, and weird coupon books and leaflets in front of the LLV's open hood. One end of the jumper cables was connected to a paperclip laid across the envelope that had been the next address on the route. When Bridger connected the other ends of the cables to the LLV's engine, the paperclip sparked, and a small fire spread to the envelope. He pulled off the cables, safety first, and then crouched to pick up the burning paper. A pang of guilt nearly overwhelmed him when he saw the childish handwriting on the front of the envelope, but he glanced again at the purple llama grazing in the distance. "This is not what I signed up for. I just want to go home." Bridger transferred the flame carefully to the pile of letters and packages. As the stack of mail became an inferno, Bridger made a very awkward attempt at an evil laugh. "How's that for getting rid of the mail?" The LLV made the smallest revving noise. Bridger glared at the machine. "That had better be gratitude that I didn't start this fire in your cargo bay, you bastard." The LLV did not reply. The peaceful countryside soon stank of burning plastic and, oddly enough, roasting armadillos. The smoke was generally a blackish gray, except when the fire hit a particular pocket of existence, and then it sparked into vibrant and shimmering life. Bridger watched the colors with a growing sense of dread, and only flinched once or twice when the colors popped a neon pink. He tried to mask his fear by gathering up the jumper cables and putting them back under the driver's side of the LLV. When the fire at last died down, Bridger was certain he'd made his point to the unfeeling universe and his boss. He tried to enter the cockpit of the LLV so that he could at last enter the address of the Atlantic City Annex into his phone and navigate home, but the door would not open. He said to the LLV, "There's more fire where that came from, buddy. Let me in. I want to go home." The door unlocked. Bridger saw at once what the LLV had been trying to hide. There was mail in the tray, and he could see from the childish scrawl on the front of the first envelope it was the same mail he'd just burned. He climbed into the driver's seat and plucked up the letter. How? He looked at the ash pile. He looked at the letter. Then back to the ash pile. He had gone back to staring at the next address on the letter when that damned monotone voice spoke to him again. "Finish your deliveries, then you will have your reward." Bridger didn't turn his head, just his eyes, and for an instant he saw not what's-his-name Krajewski, but a patch of darkness. "Welcome back, boss." The too-wide smile looked painful on Krajewski's face. "Good morning. How is your day, Mr. Bridger Hahn?" "Fucking weird," Bridger answered. "Very fucking weird." Krajewski didn't move when Bridger opened the LLV's door, but his body curled back against all laws of physics to hug the door without his feet moving. Bridger ignored this and went to the cargo bay just to check. Sure enough, each tub and package was still in place. He sighed, leaned on the door, and felt the ache in his all-too-human joints, the weight of all that undelivered, unburned burden. "Okay, boss, can I just ask—" "No." "But you cannot handle forbidden knowledge. You have not had your coffee yet." "What is that even? I don't drink coffee." "Finish your deliveries, then you will have your reward." "I'm part of the union." Krajewski blinked one eye at a time, then both together. "The union? What does a union—" "Union hours, man. I mean, I don't know the specific article or anything, but I've got a feeling that 70-something hours without going home is not okay. It's supposed to be 8 hours a day, 5 days a week." The entity stared again. "We do not understand your obsession with time, Mr. Bridger Hahn." Bridger, probably not realizing how good he looked when he did this, ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Okay, when does the mail stop refilling itself? Is there an end?" Krajewski's head tilted almost upside down as his brow furrowed with confusion. "Do you mean the end of time?" "I sure hope not." Bridger racked his brain to try to make the postmaster understand what he found to be a very basic principle. But, and forgive me for getting a little pedantic here, as a human, Bridger moved through a non-spatial continuum measured in terms of events that succeeded each other in a certain inescapable order. As a something else, the postmaster struggled with this concept. "You wish to finish your deliveries more efficiently?" Krajewski's face melted a little as the postmaster stopped smiling. "Yes, and can you not make that face?" Bridger recoiled, watching Krajewski's cheeks and ears start to droop. "Like, I'm sorry if this offends you, but you're not very good at pretending to be human, boss." The postmaster was a little hurt by that. "Go get the next relay." When Bridger returned with the mail stuffed into his satchel and a few parcels in his hand, the postmaster's entire shape was only faintly human, and black as a stockinged foot. 2 glowing lights appeared where the eyes ought to be, and they had no mouth. Still they said, "Step 1, unclench your jaws, relax your muscles." Difficult to do that with a very non-human thing in front of him, but Bridger managed. What a trooper. "Step 2, deep breath." Bridger thought of his little sister's guided meditation tapes and felt doubtful. "Step 3. The black mannequin began to vibrate and float over the ground. "Let your soul leave the ground." Step 4. Visualize the next drop. "Boss," Bridger said, I don't know if you know this, but I can't, float?" The postmaster looked down at Bridger's feet and then landed themselves. "Get back in the LLV and drive." "Jesus!" "Stop that. No more evoking." Bridger shut the cargo bay door with a slam and walked around his boss to the driver's side. "Go Google how human beings work or get a manual or something." At the end of the 6th day, the mail dwindled again to 1 tray. Bridger was hopeful and nervous every time it happened. He'd stopped trying to hold all the mail at once in the vain hope that the letters would not miraculously multiply. But on the 6th day, as he emptied the back of the LLV, it stayed empty and rattling. The mail filled only 2 trays, then half of 2 trays. Then as he drove over a road made entirely of starlight and planetary dust, where the only thing that seemed real was the mailboxes dotting every quarter of a mile, he could hold all the mail that was left in one hand. A single letter and a single package remained, and they were both addressed to Mr. Robert Johnson at Crossroad Collection Box. Bridger nearly cried again as he entered the address into his phone, whose battery had never dipped below 94%. The Crossroads were only 3 miles away. That meant New Jersey had to be nearby, didn't it? The young man in the pinstripe suit still sat on top of the collection box at the Crossroads, still played his guitar with a bright grin on his dark face. Bridger recognized the tune as Elvis Presley's Return to Sender. Bridger hardly dared to leave the LLV for fear the mail would return. 10 to 20 years of work. 10 to 20 years of eating nothing but cold meatballs and a sticky fish sauce. But he had to leave the vehicle. He had to collect the box. But first, Bridger picked up the package and letter. Robert Johnson? Yes, sir. The man put the guitar over his knee and leaned forward. You did have a letter for me after all. I do. Bridger swallowed hard. Technically, I have to ask for identification. The hell you do, the young man laughed. Sir, it's regulations. And some of those regulations had kept him alive in the past 6 days. Well, mostly. He had to bend some of the regulations about treats, but he'd been issued that treat baggie more or less officially. And besides, the route book suggested that there was a new set of regulations. This regulation, the one about identification, that was unshakable. I wouldn't want to give a stranger your mail, sir. Well, all right then. The kid sprang off the collection box, guitar dangling off his shoulder strap. He reached into his back pocket and produced an ancient leather wallet held together by duct tape and divine will. Bridger looked at the kid's picture and the name. Robert Apollo Johnson. Bridger was glad everything matched and handed the wallet back. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. You know, I think I've heard a few stories about you. About how I sold my soul to the devil to play the blues, or something spicier. Spicier. Bridger put the letter and the package into the man's hands. About how you invented the guitar. They called it a lyre back then. The young man took the package to a stump on the side of the road and sat down to open it. There was a real old fella trying to drop off a package here earlier. Couldn't seem to let it go. I think I ran into him. Bridger opened the collection box, unsurprised to see the plastic tub he'd placed in there was now made of wood. He's got to go to a proper post office to mail a package of that size, I'm afraid. Since I got your say-so, I'll just send him on through the next time I see him. The idea that anything he just witnessed would be sent on through terrified Bridger. But that old angel man had to go to a proper post office. Mr. Johnson's package contained a digital radio that played on its own as soon as he held it in his hands. It was some pop song that Bridger vaguely recognized. Oh, that's a delicious new sound. He turned his attention to the letter. Bridger loaded the outgoing mail into the back of the LLV. There must have been a dozen tubs of various materials, but no more new mail to deliver. Every time he opened the cargo bay, he was a little terrified he'd find another neatly organized tray of the automatically sorted DPS. While the god of music read his letter, Bridger climbed back into the driver's seat and entered the Atlantic City Annex into his phone. He was delirious with happiness when he saw the road blink into place. His ETA was 10 minutes. Hey, Mr. Mail Carrier. The man took up his place on top of the collection box and held out the letter. Ain't you Bridger Hahn? Bridger tried not to answer, tried not to believe, tried to turn on the vehicle and just drive away, just go home. But he couldn't not answer when he was directly spoken to by name. It wasn't polite. Yes, sir. My little brother wants you to have this letter. He thought he'd run into you while he was visiting Pops in the village, but y'all must have evaded him. Good job on that. Bridger left the truck entirely against his will and better judgment and took the letter. As he read it, the god of music swayed on the collection box and started playing along with the radio, ignoring Bridger. It was an acceptance letter, identical to the one Bridger had been sent 2 years ago when he first became a city mail carrier assistant. There must have been a typo, though. USPS was now spelled UUPS. Bridger folded the letter in his pocket, determining it couldn't possibly be a mistake, and wondering what that second U stood for. Bridger drove past the 3 identical gray houses with the 3 identical gray women. They all noticed his passing, and he waved. Friendliness is a sign of professionalism, and our Bridger is professional to a fault. The mist sank around the highway. Then the texture of the road changed. The smooth pavement gave way to bumpy bristle of a bridge. He couldn't tell where he was on account of the thickness of the fog, but he had more hope than fear. This bridge was going to lead to Atlantic City, to home, to his friends and family. He was sure of it. And how would he explain his long absence? Had it really only been 6 days? It felt like 40. His heart pounded with relief when the fog burned away and the familiar blue shape of the Water Club Casino rose above the curve of the bridge. The slow spinning windmills, the gray blue of the ocean in the distance. It was definitely the AC skyline. He knew he ought to go straight to the AC annex, but the boardwalk and the ocean were right there, and he hadn't really taken much in the way of breaks. And didn't he deserve a little human contact? 114 South New York Ave, Atlantic City. On the boardwalk at New York Ave, a man and a woman lounged by the rickshaws parked in front of the sign for Royals Rolling Chairs. The man, perched on the boardwalk railing, was small and lean and white as they come, straw blonde, slathered in sunscreen, not a straight tooth in his smile. The woman, arms crossed and leaning, was tall and broad and as black as they come, elegant curls cropped low. Her eyes glittered like black gems and rolled toward the ocean, as if she questioned every single life choice that led her to stand next to these rickshaws listening to that man chatter. When Bridger saw them, loneliness resurfaced as if it had been dammed up in his body. Now it threatened to flood as he jogged up to his friends. Terry spotted him and uncrossed her arms. "We thought you'd still be on your new route." It was only then that Bridger realized what his new boss thought he meant by extra time. Bridger looked at his watch and saw it was hardly past noon. It was the same day when he'd left. He'd finished his route through hell in about 6 hours, and 2 of those had been in Margate. Bridger felt a sinking feeling in his gut, even as he joked, "They let me out early on account of good behavior." "Bridger is here!" Chuck shot off the railing perch like a frog leaping into the air, white hair flailing in the salty breeze. "So you decide to hang work after all?" "No, not exactly." "Good man, who needs the post office and their silly demands?" Chuck prattled nonsense and danced nearby, unable to stand still. "If you run out of money, kick that evil snake of a woman back to New York and come live with us." "That's my mother, you jackass." Still, Bridger was smiling. He badly wanted to grab the idiot and just hug him. Chuck would shrug and go along with it, but Terry... She crossed her arms again and looked down at him. "What's wrong, Bridge?" "What? Nothing. I just... Is this about the time you'll finish every day?" Chuck interrupted. "Terry, dearest creature that she is, explain to me what a regular mail carrier was. You finish at the same time every day, and is it about now?" Terry broadcast to Bridger not to bother her man about more complicated descriptions, and Bridger understood perfectly. "Well, let's see after I've done it a few times." Something at the back of Bridger's mind was saying it would take him 10 to 20 years. Something else was saying more rationally that was crazy. The union insisted on a 6-day work week. His human brain still couldn't wrap around the events that had happened. Chuck's smile widened and he looked over at Terry with the purest anticipation. She sighed and nodded. "Just ask him, Chuck." "Game night. Every Tuesday," Chuck said. "Our place. We can play Risk." When Terry smiled, it was rare for her to be excited about anything enough to smile. Her teeth seemed unusually sharp. "Risk?" Bridger answered. "No, you two will murder each other. I won't do it." Terry looked crestfallen. Chuck brushed it off. "But every Tuesday, regular game night, with a party and chips and cookies and cake and..." He gasped as an idea he'd certainly entertained resurfaced as if it were brand new and sparkling. "We could play Dungeons and Dragons!" Bridger asked, "That's not hyper-competitive, is it?" "It's cooperative," Terry answered as if that was the worst thing a game could be. "And it ought to be played with 5 or more." "We'll make 2, Chuck said. Terry suggested, "Beeson can do the storytelling." "No, my dear, no. Butters." As the two of them argued, Bridger wasn't sure he understood what he just agreed to, except a regular weekly meeting with his friends, something that would not be possible if he didn't have regular hours. "But how was the route, Bridger?" Terry nudged Chuck to get him to shut up. "Yes, forgive me! Tell us all about your new route!" Then Chuck took her hint and clapped his hands in his lap as if that would keep his lips locked. Still, a little of his enthusiasm bubbled out. "So excited for you!" It was... Well, Bridger had to answer carefully if he didn't want them to worry. Why didn't he want them to worry? Because he'd either had a complete break from reality or he was the mail carrier to hell. It was a long drive, and there's a ton of really weird neighborhoods. Terry and Chuck both nodded sympathetically. And that's when Bridger realized, no matter what he went through on the route, he really was never going to tell a single living soul about what he witnessed. He didn't have the skills to talk like that. Would such a secret twist him into something that was only human adjacent, or was it just going to be another weird fact of his weird life? It's not what I was expecting, but it wasn't too bad. Chuck laughed. Of course it wasn't bad. No one fools with the post office. No one would dare. It's too rude, inexcusable, and besides, they wouldn't get their Amazon delivered. Ah, Bridger Hahn. Do you know, once he got back to his own reality, it never even occurred to the poor dear that he could quit his job, and as one professional human being. Hiya, I'm LJ.
And I'm Lane McLeod Jackson.
You're a troll.
What? I thought it was funny.
We're here to let you know you can also find us on Substack under
Paperback Productions.
Yep, this podcast and other goodies will be delivered right to your inbox if you subscribe.
So please support us.
Emotionally.
Financially.
Dramatically. See, I can be funny too.
Try to be professional, okay, babe? Thank you all for your support.